aggressive will Sean Payton be against the Buffalo Bills on offense? What's the biggest key to the game for quarterback Bo Nix? And would a loss to Buffalo in the divisional round change your outlook on the 2025 season as a whole? All things to come on today's rundown. Thank you so much for joining us. While you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to our Denver Sports 1043 The Fan YouTube channel at Denver Sports 1043 on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Again, if you're watching us on X or on Facebook, we love you. We appreciate you. Like, comment, share, subscribe. We'd love to interact with you. And turn on those post notifications so that you never miss a moment with us. Tons to get into today as it relates to the Denver Broncos and the Buffalo Bills on the Friday before their Saturday matchup at 2:30 p.m. Mountain at Empower Field at Mile High, where the winner will advance to the AFC Championship game. The Broncos looking to do so for the first time since they hoisted Lombardi Trophy exactly 10 years ago, almost exactly at this point. First thing I want to get into is involving Sean Payton, who stepped up to the podium today, and in my opinion, as I have been privy to and around for every single Sean Payton press conference since he's become the head coach of the Denver Broncos, one of his more intriguing and introspective answers that I have heard, at least in my opinion, and it had to do with his mental approach to the game, things that he is looking for, things that he's learned over the course of his time here, not just with the Broncos, but specifically at the helm with Bo Nix as his quarterback, and how it all pushes forward and applies to tomorrow afternoon's game. And Sean, who, as we all know, doesn't shy away from the moment, isn't afraid of the smoke, is more than happy and willing and sometimes eager to spar, be a little bit combative with media locally and nationally, to put the cart in front of the horse expectation-wise and say that this team is the seventh team he's ever coached that he thinks can win a Super Bowl before the season, and that Bo Nix is going to be a top 4 or 5 quarterback in the National Football League in just a number of years. And I really like and respect that about Sean Payton. I've been vocal about that. I think that he talks a lot of talk, but if you're going to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. And I think Sean Payton has walked enough of his talk in his NFL career, and specifically what he's done here with the Broncos, that he earns that tip of the cap and that nod from this person right here. You're free to make your own judgment. That's just where I'm at. But Sean has been a little bit stubborn at times when it comes to questions about his scheme, whether or not the NFL has passed him by, that maybe his offensive philosophy, which involves so many different personnel changes, swapping in and out, kind of this very technical, articulate, complex array of plays and formations changing constantly throughout the game, if that's just become archaic in a faster-paced, offensive-minded NFL in the late 2020s that we are entering now. And he has faced questions about whether or not he should be the primary play caller for the team, with Davis Webb kind of waiting in the wings. Obviously called a game in the preseason, is getting a little bit of buzz nationally during this NFL head coaching hiring cycle. And he's taken all of that with varying degrees of enthusiasm or disdain. But he spoke yesterday in a way that I found very interesting and very meaningful as it relates to the Buffalo Bills. He said that he needs to remember how quickly the plays need to go in, not just in a singular sense, but repetitively. So it's not just analyzing and dissecting the down and distance situation, calling a play for that, and then redoing it all. It's no, you need to have steps 2 and 3 ready to go because the war machine keeps moving. We've seen Bo Nix on the sideline kind of begging for play calls at times to be brought in faster because Bo is like the Energizer Bunny and he wants to go, go, go. He plays better in his mind and probably in reality when things are up tempo and he's able to be a little bit more loose and free, utilize his athleticism and kind of play in that controlled state of chaos that he has thrived in over the course of his young NFL career. He said, I need to remember to be quicker. And I need to remember that the sequencing of the game doesn't slow down for my processing because, you know, he mentioned when he was younger as a young coach and a play caller, he might run a reverse on the 8-yard line well into the red zone with trick play kind of potential there and throw caution to the wind. But as you get older, and as he got older, suddenly the risk factors and evaluations file into these things. And you start wondering, well, hey, what if we lose yardage there? Or what if this happens? Or is this better if we go at it this way because of X, Y, and Z potential outcomes? And all of that starts to cloud the noise inside the brain, but the clock keeps moving. The play clock, the game clock, and the decision-making clock from the sideline to be communicated into the quarterback in the huddle. And so I thought it was really interesting for Sean to peel back that curtain and talk about how his mental evolution as a coach and as a play caller and as an offensive mind has kind of evolved over the last 2 decades or so that he's been in the NFL in a very primary sense. And also, he gave a little bit of a peek behind the curtain into his past from a development standpoint as a child, growing up with a father who was in insurance claims, and how that risk-averse, risk assessment-fueled profession impacted him in his developmental years, talking about how we didn't have trampolines, we didn't have motorbikes, we knew where every sharp corner in the house was. You can't do X, Y, and Z because of potential consequence D, C, and E. And how that's maybe transitioned into aspects of his life as an adult and even bleeding onto the field as the primary play caller and head coach for the Denver Broncos. Now, Sean Payton's resume has proven that he has overcome whatever potential significant or otherwise setbacks or quirks or influences from childhood handed down by parents in that regard. But Sean Payton stepping up to the podium yesterday and talking the way that he did about his role as the play caller, being vulnerable enough to open up about his developmental years, growing up with a father in a very specific profession with claims insurance, and folding it all back into things he needs to remember for Saturday's game against the Buffalo Bills, tells me, which is a question that we have talked about over the course of this week, Sean Payton knows exactly what needs to be done. And then from a headspace perspective, is dialed in exactly the way that he and the offense need to be ahead of this matchup to do what they need to do, which is be better than they've been. Now, I said yesterday that we shouldn't reasonably expect Sean Payton and the Broncos offense to look drastically different than they've looked over the course of an 18-game regular season tomorrow against the Buffalo Bills. But if there was ever a glimmer of hope for that to happen, it comes as a result of the things we heard from Sean Payton on the podium yesterday afternoon. The fact that he is very, very self-aware to the point where he's openly and willingly forthcoming about it to the media and talking about the minutia and the details of the things that he needs to dial in better ahead of Saturday's game means that, from my perspective, this offense has once again gone over within themselves from a self-awareness standpoint where they're good, where they're bad, where they can improve, and what they need to do in order to walk away victorious against a team in the Buffalo Bills that, yes, is the 6th seed, yes, is dealing with significant injuries in the wide receiver room, on defense, and even, frankly, to their quarterback, Josh Allen, but a dangerous team as they're going to face in the AFC. I felt very reassured by what Sean Payton said yesterday and how it potentially is going to manifest itself into this game tomorrow afternoon. We've seen it in moments, we've seen it in spurts, we've seen it in flashes, but there hasn't been the consistency from this Broncos offense that we would like to see from a team that we all have hopes and aspirations can potentially win a Super Bowl 10 years after they last won it in the 2015-2016 season. Getting the plays in quicker, operating with more tempo, which is leaning into the wants, needs, and desires of the young quarterback in Bo Nix, who has been begging to just kind of be let off the chain a little bit and operate a little bit more outside of the structure, which Sean Payton's offense is littered and filled with very specific, minute, and detailed structures that alternate so frequently within a game that from a defensive perspective, it can be hard because of the shell game that's being played with the formations to know what's coming and when and how that might look in quarter 1 versus 2, 3, and 4. But I expect, based on Sean Payton's tone yesterday, that we're going to see a little bit more tempo, that we're going to see a little bit more of a commitment to the run game. He referenced again, I'm going to write it on my play sheet, run it. Sean Payton was livid at one point that the broadcast caught that detail written on his play sheet and the meme and the local kind of folklore that it took on. Now he's openly telling you, I'm writing it on there again because it's important. He's telling you that he needs to be faster, and he's aware of the fact that from a play calling perspective, we need to play with a little bit more tempo. Doesn't mean we're not going to try to sustain drives, but we need to play with a little bit more tempo to be able to keep our quarterback and our offense in rhythm. The Denver Broncos absolutely can win this game tomorrow afternoon against the Buffalo Bills. But as the Jacksonville Jaguars discovered last week in the wild card round, you have to be at your best when you are going up against the best. And while the Buffalo Bills may not represent the best in the AFC or in the NFL, their quarterback in Josh Allen just about represents the best or embodies enough of a threat and a danger at that position with what he's able to do with his physicality, with his legs, and with his arm that I think people sometimes still forget about because it's so easy to be tantalized by the other things. The Broncos are going to have to be at their best, and the offense is not going to be able, in my opinion, to rely on the defense to keep them in games as efficiently as they have against inferior opponents. Because we're in the second round. We're in the divisional round of the playoffs right now. And even though the AFC is wide open, all of these teams are good, and you could paint a picture where any team remaining in the AFC can make it to Santa Clara and potentially win. That's kind of where we're at. And so the Broncos, while they're firmly among that group as the number 1 seed in the AFC, they've got to be on their P's and Q's. Sean Payton seems very aware of that. I would imagine by extension, the team is very aware of that. And even though I said yesterday and still ultimately believe that the Broncos offense is going to look fairly similar, just as they have all year, where they've proven me wrong or zagged when I've zigged on certain things, maybe there's a chance, just a chance, that we see some things that we have not before, and the Broncos, if they are able to execute that, probably will walk away victorious on Saturday. As it relates to Bo Nix, it is time to hit the turn, presented by The Birdie Bar, Louisville's premier indoor golf bar and entertainment venue. With their mini golf setup and outdoor patio that's heated, they have the perfect cure for your winter blues. When it comes to Bo Nix, I think there's something that many have been observing and calling for over the backstretch of this NFL season that would be perfectly at home if it were to manifest itself at Empower Field at Mile High on Saturday afternoon at 2:30 p.m. I think a legitimate key to victory for the Broncos, and certainly a point of emphasis for Bo Nix, is once again to utilize his athleticism in the run game. I think Bo Nix has operated at times within the framework of the offense and molded things and bended them to a degree that has helped them win 14 games out of 17 tries. And while you don't necessarily want to say that you would take certain things back or that if you used revisionist history, everything would play out the same, but Sean Payton has mentioned it. I think Bo Nix has alluded to it at times over the course of this season. The best opportunity for this offense to do what they've done a better job of in late games and late in the season with the sustainability of these drives, both in the run game using RJ Harvey and Jaleel McLaughlin, but also with Bo Nix. If Bo Nix is able to utilize his legs 4, 5, 6 times during this game in a way that manifests itself either in first downs or in putting the offense in a down and distance situation that is manageable, because the Broncos defense is great at stopping teams when they are inside of 3rd and 4 or shorter. The Bills, conversely, are one of the best teams in the NFL when they are in down and distance 3rd and 4 or shorter. So you have a little bit of an unstoppable force and an immovable object facing each other on the opposite side of the ball for the Broncos. But for this offense in Bo Nix, if Bo Nix is able to turn himself loose a handful of times in this game, using his legs in the run game to the tune of 6 or 7 carries, a handful of which can keep the Broncos' drives alive either via first down or to keep the down and distance situation and the proximity to the chains in a frame that allows them to keep the entire playbook open for a team like the Buffalo Bills that is pretty bad against the run and dealing with injuries on both sides of the ball. That, to me, is a significant key for Sean Payton, for Bo Nix, and for this offense as a whole if Denver is going to walk away victorious tomorrow afternoon. There is another pressing question, though, about this season that I've gone back and forth with Zach Bye on The Drive, with Josh Dover on Dover and Cecil, and kind of put it out there amongst the Twitterverse and our social media channels at Denver Sports 1043 The Fan. We talk about the term must win a lot in the regular season, right? In the playoffs, it's win or go home. So in theory, every game is a must win if your goal is to win a Super Bowl. But when we're looking at this game against the Bills tomorrow afternoon, if the Broncos don't win, knock on wood, God forbid, if the Broncos don't win against the Bills on Saturday, does that change your outlook or perception on the 2025 season as a whole? Should it change the outlook on the Denver Broncos in 2025 coming off of their 2024 season and Bo Nix's rookie year and the sophomore campaign that followed? Would a loss in the postseason, specifically this game tomorrow against the Bills in the divisional round, would that undo anything for you? Because I'll tell you where I'm at. I think it is amazing what the Broncos were able to accomplish in the regular season. To win 14 games out of 17 tries in the NFL is just hard to do. I don't subscribe to some of the national narratives that center around the Broncos or even the Patriots, right? Who say the Patriots are 14-3, they're the number 2 seed, but they haven't played anybody good. The Broncos are the number 1 seed in the AFC, but they're the weakest number 1 seed in God knows how long, and their offense is this, and the defense is XYZ, blah, blah, blah. I said this about the Kansas City Chiefs, who won upwards of 10 or 11 one-score games last year en route to a 15-2 season that could have been 16-1 if they played their starters against the Broncos in Week 18. If you're the worst 15-2 or 14-3 team in the history of the National Football League, you still won 14 or 15 games out of 17 tries. That's not something you luck into. That's not something you trip and fall upon. That is the sign of a team that is connected, that has a synergy about them from offense to defense and special teams, and frankly, has talent across the board in situations that have manifested themselves into wins. For the Broncos in 2025, it's been crunch time. It's been those clutch moments in the final minutes of halves and overtime where they have been one of, if not the best statistical teams in the National Football League. I think it is amazing what the Denver Broncos have done in the 2025 regular season. It's given so much hope and optimism and momentum moving forward for a quarterback on a rookie contract. The Broncos went from a rebuilding team last year that snuck into the wild card to now a bona fide AFC and Super Bowl contender, and has the conversation shifting toward not just a rebuild or a retool, but they are a legitimate contender with a rookie quarterback in a contract window. But if they lose to the Buffalo Bills tomorrow afternoon at Empower Field at Mile High, there will be a sentiment from me that feels like this season, ultimately, when you're looking at it from a 1,000-foot view, was a failure. And that feels hard to say because of how successful they were in the regular season, how many steps it feels like were taken and maybe were leapt over to skip a couple of rungs on that ladder, from Bo Nix's development to the connection with his head coach to the defense and the way that they've matured, the greatest sack differential in NFL history at plus 45, and the pieces that have emerged on that side of the ball. But it didn't manifest when it really mattered, and that's the playoffs. The regular season is great, but the postseason is what every team plays for. The ultimate goal for all 32 teams in the NFL is to win a Super Bowl. Can't do it every year, but that's the goal. And if we're using that metric, the Broncos, from a postseason perspective, wouldn't actually be that much closer to their goal than they were last year when they lost to the Bills 31-7 in a game that was tight before it lost traction in the second half, because they still lost their first postseason game that they lined up for. The difference would be, and why it would sting so much more, is last year, the Broncos snuck into the wild card in a sense that it almost felt like they were somewhere they weren't supposed to be, and the end result of the game against the Buffalo Bills ended the way that many expected. This time around, the Broncos are the top dog. They are the top seed. They secured a first-round bye. They won 14 games and put themselves in a position where they're 2 home playoff games at Empower Field away from a return to Santa Clara for the Super Bowl. So if they can't win a playoff game in that scenario, where they caught a lot of green lights, they entered a postseason field as the top seed that also didn't include Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, and still couldn't make it manifest one playoff win, that to me feels like a failure. It does. Now, I hope it doesn't happen. In my heart of hearts, I don't think it's going to happen, because I think the Broncos are going to win this game. But I do think it's going to create a fascinating evaluation, specifically in this week, if a loss were to happen for the Broncos, how we would look back on the 2025 season as a whole from beginning to end. Want to get to a handful of your comments here before we sign off. I can see them rolling in on the sidebar there. Trey, go ahead and throw them up when you're ready, because this is a big deal. When the Broncos lose tomorrow, we will realize how fake of a season this was. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at right there. And I think there's validity to that sentiment, because you're going to start creeping in all the doubt of, well, maybe they weren't as good as we thought, or this defense this defense that. How about this? How about the fact that we don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be next year? So if Vance Joseph is gone, as he is one of the bells of the ball in this coaching cycle that's heading into the postseason and will continue into the offseason, if VJ leaves, is the defense reasonably going to take a step back? Probably. And so now you're talking about, okay, we had one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. We had a quarterback in Bo Nix who took a significant step from freshman year to sophomore year in the NFL. We won 14 games, secured the number 1 seed, got a first-round bye, and still lost in the divisional round the first time we lined up. How do we know, or what are we drawing from that's going to say we're going to do all of that again and the outcome will be different? Oh, well, they ran up against the Buffalo Bills. Every team in the playoffs, in the second round of the playoffs, is going to be pretty good. You're going to have to beat at least a good team or 2 or probably 3 to get to the Super Bowl, especially to win one. So to say like, oh, well, they ran up against the Bills and that's just this. Now you're talking like a Bills fan, frankly, who's hit that ceiling over and over and over again. And look at them. Oh, well, we ran into Patrick Mahomes. Bang. Oh, okay, well, we ran into Joe Burrow. Bang. Right? It's like they have a problem in Buffalo, and the conversations they're having are, why can't we take that next step? The Broncos, if they lose on Saturday, will welcome in that kind of conversation, and I just think that's such a disservice and an unfortunate outcome to a season that has put them in such an advantageous position. What else we got, Trey? Noise, play on point, points, no matter what. That's, yeah, the Broncos offense is going to have arguably its best game of the season tomorrow. And yes, it's the postseason, so some of that is like, duh. But again, you go back to that weighing evaluation of, at what point is something just what it is? At what point is it what it is? Is the Broncos offense that we've seen for 18 weeks that's been frustrating for basically 16, if not, at least 15 or 16 of them, is that just who they are? Can we expect to see Sean Payton and Bo Nix go out there at Empower Field tomorrow afternoon and just light the field on fire the way that they did against the Dallas Cowboys with all the points they put up there, and the way that they did eventually to a certain degree against the Cincinnati Bengals, who obviously were playing without Joe Burrow? I don't think so, because you got Josh Allen playing on the other side and a Bills defense that, even though they're bad against the run, they're interestingly, borderline sneakily good with their zone coverage. And that is something that I think that they will utilize or try to utilize to their advantage against Bo Nix, who has seen a lot of looks like that because of the success that teams have had against the Broncos when using it. What else we got? I hope the defense plays really physical. I agree with you, Mark. I'll tell you this. I saw a stat before we went live here today, courtesy of Kay Adams, who is the ultimate guest whisperer when it comes to the National Football League. People tell her things that they don't tell anybody else, and I can't imagine why. I would too. In games that Josh Allen is hit less than 6 times, he's 11-1. In games that he's been hit more than 6 times, he's 6-6. And I can't remember if that goes back, because that would be 12 and 12, 24 games. So over the last 24 games or so, if you're looking at a sample size, 6-6 when he gets hit more than 6 times. So if the whatever nicknames we came up with for Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper, if they can get back to their early season form and lay some wood on Josh Allen, who's dealing with a banged up knee, he's got a bad wrist, he got hit in the head. He's clearly kind of willing himself to play in this game at less than 100%. And that doesn't even factor in potential pressure up the middle from John Franklin Myers, from Zach Allen, etc. If the Broncos defense can get after Josh Allen, put him on the turf a handful of times per quarter, their chances of winning this game skyrocket in a pretty significant way. Again, thanks to Kay Adams for that elusive stat that I had not seen up to that point. Is there any validity to thinking that the Broncos have been holding their cards close to the chest and playing a vanilla game plan in order to not show what we'll do in the playoffs? Jason, that's a great question. And my answer would be not really. No. I mean, this is the NFL, dude. They can't hold their cards close to their vest for 4.5 months of a regular season to prep for the playoffs. I think they started out of the gate slower and a little bit clunkier than they would have thought. Certain elements of the offense, like Marvin Mims and Evan Ingram, haven't latched on or really taken a form the way that I think they, and certainly we, thought that they might. And it's just been an ongoing evaluation period. They haven't made things look easy, but they've got the job done more often than not. If you want to say they were playing a vanilla game plan in week 18 against the Chargers, I'm with you, right? Maybe in that Bengals game on Monday Night Football, but that's a prime time game. You know what I'm saying? So even then, it's like, and Sean Payton loves prime time. If you want to say they were holding things back and playing a vanilla game plan against the Chargers, I'm with you. But it's not as if the teams in the postseason that they were trying to hold things back from in the final week of the regular season don't also have 3.5 months of actual game film where they played real teams in real games to be able to go off of. This isn't like all of a sudden we have a whole new playbook that's going to drop on the table in their meetings leading up to this game tomorrow, at least from my perspective. Year of the fire horse. It's our moment. The year of the Blucifer. This is the Blucifer year. I'm into that. I've said forever, I wish we could bring back, an AFL team and name them the Denver Demon Horses, because I think Blucifer is the most underrated potential mascot in all of sports. But I'll tell you what, it really does feel like the stars have aligned for the Broncos this year, which is why I think I'll be so frustrated if they don't go out there and take care of business against the Bills, because look at the path that they carved for themselves. How could it have been much better? I mean, they won 14 games. They got the number 1 seed, home field advantage through the playoffs. And they keep the way that the bracket shook out in the postseason. It's not this murderer's row compared to previous postseasons that we've seen that featured a dynastic Chiefs team or a hot and interesting Bengals team, or Lamar Jackson, a multi-time MVP. You know what I mean? Things have fallen for the Broncos in a very, very nice way this season. So I hope it's the year of the fire horse. I do, because I just don't know if I'm going to be able to stomach looking back on the regular season and just gushing with joy about everything that we saw when it ultimately amounted to the same result as last year, which is 0 playoff wins. And then you're going to have to factor in the fact that the NFL is going to go through different cycles and change. Teams in the AFC are going to shuffle around. The Broncos are going to undergo personnel change on the field and within the coaching staff. And you just don't know if the cards are going to fall like that again. That was the moment. And I don't want to be like the Andy Bernard looking back in with some somber tones and saying, man, remember how everything looked going into that game and it just didn't happen the way it was in 2012 with Raheem Moore and Jacoby Jones going over the top, when that team felt like it was destined for a Super Bowl and one fluke play changed the entire trajectory of their season. I don't want that, because I think the Broncos can win this game. And ultimately, in my heart of hearts, I think they're going to. But Josh Allen just makes me nervous, man. And I think many of you may disagree with me, and flatly, I'll just say I think you're lying. I think Josh Allen is insane as an NFL talent. I think he is Superman. I think that almost any team in the NFL, regardless of who's playing quarterback for them, would strongly consider swapping them for a guy like Josh Allen because of what he brings from a skill set perspective. And that just scares me, man. I watched the Jacksonville Jaguars beat him up. I watched them be better on offense, be better on defense, and be better on the special teams side of things, and still lose, because that man, Josh Allen, willed them to victory at the end of the game. And I just am going to be sick to my stomach if Denver finds a way to allow that to happen. But it's a football Friday. We are on the eve. We are about 24 hours away from finding out how things will shake out between the Broncos and the Bills. And ultimately, I think the Broncos are going to win. I am excited for that. I am excited as the Nuggets and Avalanche seasons continue down the backstretch of their seasons. The Avs are still in contention with that Boston Bruins team for potentially the greatest regular season of all time. And man, as I said with Anil Apiro and Jake Shapiro earlier this week, the Denver Nuggets are changing my perspective on things, man. They are proving to me that they are capable of things that I just truly, in my gut, wasn't sure they're capable of. It's an exciting time to be a Denver sports fan. It really, really is, and I am thankful for it. I encourage all of you to soak in as much of it as you can, because as we know, with all three of our franchises that are currently operating at a very high level right now, it hasn't always been this way, and it may not be this way forever. But while we're in the glory days, let's capitalize on it. And capitalizing on it means like and subscribe to our Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan YouTube channel, because I'm telling you, there is no greater archive of local content about our teams, Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, maybe even the Rockies, 2024 All-Star signing, new owner, new leadership, all that stuff, Buffs, who are coming up on an incredibly pivotal season that could change the immediate and long-term trajectory of that program once again. Our proud partner, the CSU Rams. We love them up in Fort Collins. Go Rammies. Everything, you're going to think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. Everything you could possibly want to consume from a sports media standpoint, I swear to God, it's there at Denver Sports 104.3 on YouTube. You can also go there on Instagram and TikTok. Follow us on Facebook, on X. Consume our content here. Shows like this one, The Rundown, From the Nosebleeds with Joey Gunner, the unquestioned Orange and Blue Today with Cecil Lammy and Andrew Mason, the best Broncos content in the market, and maybe even beyond, frankly, because once it goes beyond, what are we really talking about? And that doesn't even touch the surface of our radio lineup. Stokely and Evans with Mark Schlereth, Dover and Cecil, The Drive with Zach By and Philip Lindsay, short form content, long form content, entertainment, sports, opinion, analysis, information, all of it bundled into one specific location at Denver Sports 104.3 on YouTube. Go like it, go subscribe to it, and we will catch you on hopefully a victory Monday afternoon for the next rundown.
I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.